Boy and Lady stood side by side beside the outermost field of Three Up Fort. For once, Boy was not staring at his crop babies, but at the horizon. The mountainside sloped gently down towards a river, then a flat plain beyond. Faint dark patches were visible where herds of animals were gathered. Smoke rose in the distance. Comariero's old cave village, the only feature of the empty expanse. "Where are we supposed to start looking?" Lady asked. "That's why I hope those zappers, those people already here, you know. What I hope they'll be able to tell us," Boy said. "They must know something, even if they've forgotten the Overlord. It was here. It's the only way this place can be so connected to pieces. Dunno how to get them to spill it, though." Lady stroked the fox pelt she wore on her head. Comariero's idea. He had made one for Tokka too, and they really were quite comfy. For Lady though, it was just nice to feel protected by it. She felt the same way about the fort. The feeling of looking at the great expanse, then at the trusty fort walls, was comforting indeed, even if said walls were being thoroughly marked as the territory of the Huskies day and night. As they stood there, a sound reached them from down the hill. It was a pointed mooing, echoing up between the smaller mesas and rocks. Boy suggested they ask the wonk what it was, but then the unmistakable sound of thunderbolts drowned the droning out. I mean gunfire here, to be clear. It repeated a few times in quick bursts. Then human screams joined the symphony, and Boy had heard enough. Lady ran back inside, passing Tumas on the way. "Don't worry, Butter, it'll be nothing," he assured her, but she didn't hear it. Tumas joined Boy in running down the mountain. After rounding a few banks of rocks, they came upon a woman dressed head to toe in black, lying in the mud. Her legs were both bloodied, no doubt something to do with the bison staring her down with red-stained chops. The woman was stretching out for a satchel beside her, but couldn't move to reach it. "Another mad beast. Demons haunt these woods," Boy said. He readied his dagger, but for all his knightly ambitions, he didn't fancy his chances against a charging, sharp-horned monster. Luckily, Tumas had a smarter play. He ran towards the woman, drawing the bison's ire. "Throw it here!" he shouted. The woman gave him half a look, then tossed a black, L-shaped lump in Tumas's vague direction. Tumas caught it with even less than half a look, and crashed to his knees beside that satchel. He pulled something out, fiddled with the L-shape, then blasted out at least a dozen thunderbolts at the closing bison. It ploughed into the mud in front of him. Then he put a few more thunderbolts in it for good measure. "It's the disease, not demons. Can't go up to orbital without a rub-down 'cause of it," Tumas said to Boy, while handing the downed woman her weapon. "Some doctor you are then," Boy said, tapping his dagger against the bison's horn. "You're a doctor?" the bleeding woman asked. "She's a tit," Tumas nodded. "Just what you wanted." The woman sighed, believing she was about to trade her survival for slavery. She draped her arms around the pair as they carried her to the fort. The two had a few questions, but she was stuck between crying out in pain and falling unconscious. The latter got its way, and next thing she knew, she was inside a poorly furnished cave with her legs bandaged and splintered. There was food and water beside her, and she lay in a bed so comfy she could have sworn it was fresh from a colony kit. Eventually, Comariero came into the little cave hospital to check on her. "Thanks for saving me," the woman offered. Comariero shook his head, pointed at the food beside the bed, and said, "That long walker will give you back the strength it took." Then he took his leave. Comariero wasn't a huge fan of Tets, repelled almost without thought by her voice. Not as bad as the Erefs, though. Later on, Boy went in to explain the not slavery situation, and permitted the woman to go home once she was healthy. But he was no idiot. Such generosity was only offered after she spilled everything about her little trip. Apparently, she had been travelling to a dead drop of priceless cosmic people treasures left by Tets from the north. She was a Tet from the south, from the mini-nation of Bystone on the other side of the mountain chain. It almost seemed like fate. The location of the historic treasure was only a few days east according to her shakily drawn map. The Hillicat was about to be found, Boy proclaimed ad nauseum. The only way to shut him up was to go find it, and that's just what happened the very next day. Boy, Staves, and Tumas geared up for adventure. Tumas thwacked the Tet woman's pistol into a pouch on his belt. Staves threw ropes over the backs of the two megasheep so food could be hung from those sturdy, mobile rafters. Boy threatened Comariero with all manner of dagger-related activities if anything happened to Lady while they were away. "I do not know what you will find there, if anything," Comariero said, "but you should take rest to know that all you shall need awaits you here. I cannot stray from the fire again. The mass knows where I lie, and I will not attempt to fool it." A confusing goodbye as they go, but a goodbye nonetheless. Toka went around and gave each of the departing trio a smooth stone.
"Hold on to the ground you want to get back to, and you can't get lost. My sister told me that. I should have listened, but that's how you learn," she sighed.
"Never thought it was easy as that. Bloody GPS trackers on orbital wasting their time," Tumas laughed, indicating that whatever he had just said was funny in some way. Toka was far less than amused, trudging off wordlessly in a continuation of her endless psychite withdrawal stupor. At least she didn't raise her voice to its fullest, most devastating sharpness in that state. Finally, Lady gave Boy a long hug, then the three set out. Lady had not been apart from Boy for several years at that point, and even though she knew this time would not be like at home, she was stuck endlessly fiddling with the fox paws framing her face. Cannibal danced around her feet for a moment, then raced off after Staves. Looks like she was going too then. The adventure begins. All Lady, Toka, and Comariero needed to do was look after the crops for a week or so at the most, and the crusade would be triumphant. But that wouldn't be a roll-up chronicle. That very night, the smell of smoke drove the remaining huskies into a frenzy of barking, which brought the colonists out to see the glow in the outer fields.
"Oh no,"
Lady whispered, standing stock still. War cries from outside bounced around the mesas. Hearing them, Comariero sighed. He placed his hand on Lady's fox headdress, then pushed it down over her eyes. "Tell me, fiend of rocks, will you serve the chiefess if I go to fight my past?" he said to Toka. She was ambling up from the cave, her eyes locked on the shivering firelight against the trees beyond the farm. She gave no response to Comariero, but ambled on past him towards the action. Please, be," Lady stuttered. "Your brother would never have let this happen. I will appease the mass for you. It will be over soon," Comariero assured her. He notched an arrow in his bow and followed Toka towards the gateway. In the darkness there were at least 3 torch wielders putting the cornstalks beyond the wall to flame. Comariero loosed an arrow far wide of any useful mark. The attackers grinned. Their plan to get the pesky flat-cavers out from their walls had worked. One rushed him with a club, and 2 others returned fire with bows. Comariero started running back inside, with 2 more arrows clacking off the wall in front of him. The club wielder was just about to catch up when Toka made it through the gate herself. Comariero was about to shout for her to get back, but she raised an enormous silver handgun in both hands and blasted out a shot that knocked her to the ground with its recoil, leaving her ears screaming for quiet. It had a far worse effect on the raider, who, suffice to say, did not last long without the top of his head. The sight startled Comariero so much he tripped over his own feet, coughing out vomit as he hit the dirt. The other 2 attackers were racing up, with 2 more arrows ready to skewer the downed pair. But Comariero pulled his shaking hands to his mouth and blew out an unsteady whistle. At this, 4 fine individuals named Pound, Sum, Only, and Grin burst onto the scene. With growls and barks, the huskies swarmed the 2 archers and knocked them down. By the time Comariero was back on his feet, the struggle was over. Both archers lay still, bleeding from the neck. The huskies looked at them, then to Comariero. This was the point where they would get a treat in Staves' training routines. The real thing disappointed. Comariero pulled Toka up to her feet and took the handgun from her. "A servant with secrets," he mumbled. I will see what else the night holds. He crossed back out to the fields, or what was left of them. The flames were rolling up the corn rows towards a shed adjoining the main wall. Camariero ran to fetch Lady, and together they whacked at the flames with rubbery mats from the colony kit.
Are they?
Lady tried to ask. I will perform all the rituals. You need not take it to mind a moment more, Camariero assured her. Together they saved some of the crops, but the flames had licked their way under the door of the shed. This particular shed was packed with firewood, Cosmic People first aid kits, and priceless spare parts for the blowwork machines, a powder keg of sorts. Camariero had no second thoughts about running right through the fire to defend the interior, quickly raking away piles of melting plastic and hissing wood to clear space, then driving the blaze back out the door. Tokka and Lady were both snuffing out the last of the active crop fires, but Tokka nearly fainted from inhaling all the smoke. Camariero helped both of them back inside, made one final check of the ash-topped fields, then slumped down beside the women in the hall. We have defied the Kote again, he said, mumbling almost to himself. Then again, it was not the case for them. Do we make the mass roll up the other way?
I wish I had some psychite,
was all Tokka had to say, said with even more croak than usual.
Thank you, Camariero,
Lady said, looking up at him. He remained in thought and did not reply. Lady found herself wishing that Staves were there, since he would no doubt have a clear-minded take on it all and get things back on track. Obviously that was also the main thing that was wrong with him too, but being high on burnt corn fumes gives you a nostalgic view of things, it seems. So what were the rest of the crew up to? Well, they arrived at the destination on the map uneventfully after days of trekking through sparse woods and blooming plains. While the map was crude, they knew for sure they'd found where it was leading them. There was a tiny hut against the side of an embankment, almost hidden. Don't look all that holy, Bada, Tumas said of it. Boy ignored him and rushed over to the rotting door. Cannibal sniffed at the gaps in the frame, but had nothing to report. The door was unlocked and swung open to reveal a nearly empty room. All it contained was a bundle wrapped in crispy plastic sheets in the middle of the floor. It's a baby, Staves remarked, but his experience of the world through castle fairy tales failed him once again. Boy unwrapped the package to reveal something. It was a pile of glassy tiles with little black arteries running through them, looking like vegetable roots. Probably not a baby. But was it a piece of the Almighty? Hollowed out pits! Boy cursed after inspecting the objects in daylight. He dropped the shiny slabs, but Tumas launched himself to the ground to catch them. Treat all your gods like this, Butter, he snarked. It's nothing. There has to be something, Boy said, going back into the hut for another fruitless search. We failed, Stave shrugged, throwing a pine cone for Cannibal to chase. Not really, Butter. If the Tets were sneaking these about, they're worth more than their weight in space soap. I reckon it's a computer from the core. My weight in space soap's quite a lot. Yeah, well, we'll see what we can get for you, big man. Just you wait till a bit of blow work hits these babies. Something good might happen then. At this, Boy jumped out of the hut. Of course, blow work! That makes perfect sense, he claimed. At once he drove the party back home, which was an easier path to navigate since the mountains were off in the distance, clear to see. They arrived to see a composting pile of ash and corn stalks outside the gateway. Boy dashed inside, but found all was well. The Tetious woman had gone home. There was blood staining the walls by the gateway, and the animals were rushing out to see Staves. Inside the hall, Lady recounted what she knew of the attack, which was enough. The Hillocat? She asked him. Look, Boy said, drawing out the crackly package. Holding the tiles up to the fireballs made them glow in a very holy-seeming fashion. What does it mean? Lady whispered. Means it's blowing time, Staves reported. He pulled the pipe from the fireball in the middle of the hall, extinguishing it, then thrust it at a tile. The little hairs sticking from the end of the pipe were splayed in all directions, and quiet buzzing sounds were heard. "Harder," Staves concluded. He pulled a bundle of pipes from the unlimited campfire and jammed them all at the slab. It actually lit up a little bit, which was something.
"What are we meant to do? We need a priest,"
Lady despaired. The other three sidled in at this point, and were more impressed at the light-up brick. They remarked on it, but Boy shushed them. "We have to pray! Everyone sit down!" he insisted. "Always keen for a sit-down, Bada," Toomus nodded. Staves got the dogs to stop sniffing the strange thing, and sit patiently also. Boy and Lady closed their eyes and gripped their hands together. The glow of the slab grew and faded with no apparent pattern.
"It is speaking,"
Comariero whispered. "What?" Toomus shot back, only to be shushed with intensity that dwarfed the sound of his question. Listening carefully, it was as if something was talking to him. A faint voice, muffled as if behind a barrier. After a while communicating his incredulity with his face, Toomus gave in and gripped his hands together too. Tokka sat with her eyes closed, as usual, and Comariero held his hands out towards the slab, as if warming them from it. The voice carried on, unintelligible and minute, but definitely speaking. The insides of their ears twinged as the language foam tried to translate the sounds. Nothing could be made out though. Then, Staves noticed the dogs were looking over at the air vent to his room. He shuffled along the grubby floor to get closer. Sure enough, the muffled voice was louder. He placed his ear to the vent.
"I'm telling you, the channel is open,"
a voice was saying. Staves gulped. Hard to know what to say when you're about to meet the Overlord. Although this sounded more like an overlady. It definitely wasn't the voice they had heard before.
"I think it's in there,"
Staves eventually spoke up, pointing to the vent. Everyone rushed over and listened against the wall. "Why is it in your bloody room?" Boy growled, going straight outside and swinging around to Staves' door. It was locked, but a single kick saw to that.
"Hey, I heard something. Off-worlders, is that you?"
the voice said. Boy was straight down to his knees, with Lady and Staves following suit. The others stood behind them and looked at the source of the voice, that innocuous cosmic rod against the wall.
"Hello? We could tell you've connected. Didn't Ash tell you how it worked?"
the voice said.
"Hello?"
Tokka power wheezed.
"That's it. She said one of them had a crazy voice. Okay, I'll put you through."
The praying trio braced themselves for what that might mean. All that happened was another voice entered the fray.
"Good day, off-worlders. I am Councillor Satsuki of Tetius. Can you hear me?"
"The Overlord has no name," Boy said.
"Boy, it doesn't sound like the Overlord,"
Lady pointed out. "But it has to be," Boy insisted, grabbing the cosmic rod and holding it up.
"I'll take that as a yes,"
Satsuki said. "You're a tit. I hear you right, butter?" Toomus asked.
"Affirmative. You sound like a spacer. Ash said as much. I must thank you for your help in saving my friend. I had hoped to keep our operation under the radar, as they say, but the Scaria leaves no corner untouched, and neither do you, I gather. You aren't on any maps I've seen. Not anything to do with Erifunavelium, are you?"
"We're from Tindra. You won't know it. We can travel between the worlds," Staves claimed.
"You have a ship?"
Satsuki asked excitedly. "They're talking at their vacuums, butter," Toomus said. "Trust me, I've seen it all. Just a case of some lost droppers making a bad nut boom of themselves out here. Seems they swapped some fresh colony kit from pieces."
Ah, okay, thank you. It seems Swiping Kid is the name of your game then. I'm glad you got the computers working.
"I used my blow work on it," Staves boasted.
You did what?
"We trapped wind and fed it into the Overlord piece with a pipe."
Sweet core blues. You really aren't from Redicott.
"He doesn't speak for us all, Zappa," Comariero said.
Zapper, you got tribals there. I really hoped I could rely on you.
"I saved your woman. You rely on us already." "You can rely on us," Boy said. "Please, if you have instructions for us, we're waiting. Whatever you need." "She is not your master," Comariero tried to remind him, but Boy had none of it. Turned out this Councillor Satsuki actually did have instructions for them.
This whole operation's gone to pieces, and only you can save us now,
Satsuki said. That precise phrasing lit Boy's eyes up. Lady nodded at him. Salvation, Komariero smiled.
We'll do whatever we can,
Tokka assured the rod. And don't worry, miss. You don't have to say how you feel right away, Staves added.
Thanks, that's very kind, all of you.
Satsuki said with a little apprehension.
We'll make these days as pleasant as we can for each other. The Tetious Way.
In this case, the so-called Tetious Way was going to involve something specific. Part 2 of the jaunts out into the wild is nigh, this time for a very different kind of treasure.